This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Whether you love true crime or comedy, celebrity interviews or news, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue. And guess what? Now you can call them on your auto insurance too with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. It works just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll show you coverage options that fit your budget. Get your quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
So, hi everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unpacking Possibility. I'm your host, Tracy Stein, as always. I'm so happy to be here with you. Today's guest is so interesting. His name is David Hulse. We're going to talk about all kinds of things, including and especially spirituality, our spiritual development in this era. I'm going to read a little bit from David's bio, and then he'll tell you more about his journey. But David Hulse is a vibrant spiritual guide who bridges traditional doctrines with contemporary spiritual insights. David has decades of experience as a minister, a teacher, an author, and a healer. And he's journeyed from a fundamentalist Christian upbringing to an inclusive spiritual vista that champions love over fear. I was going to read more of your bio, but I'd really like to have you tell more of your story.
Sure.
But welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our time together and the direction the conversation is going to take today. Well, as you said in the bio, I came from a very fundamentalist Christian background of ministers and preachers and whatever. But when I look back to the earliest memory I have of being a conscious being, which is very young as a child, I felt a different connection to what was going on outside of me, to what was happening inside of me, even at that age. So as I heard about this angry God and all of this Old Testament stuff, it just made no sense to me. And therefore, I believe that I call it conscious born. And what I mean by that, I think there is a massive souls on the planet that has come in through a different frequency or a portal to be incarnated this time, in which they did not fall deeply into the sleep of the dream of illusion. And they've had a different rapport with time and space. So that's probably a lot of people we're speaking to right now who's felt that they never fit in, that there's different even from the family traditions. And it's not that somebody taught them that. They already knew that. So I think that is what's happening right now. It's kind of a call that's going out from the universe for us to begin to come together. Now, some call them light workers. I call them the first fruits of the harvest. But I believe that there is a people that are feeling an activation of codes that they made in agreements and contracts before they came into this time. So to answer your question is that I decided to follow the inner path rather than my outer path. And of course, there's always a price to pay when you do that. But it's rewarding if you do that. You really find a freedom that you don't find in trying to do that within the confinements of the simulation of the third dimensional world, which is resistance.
So you've said a lot there, and I want to make sure everybody can follow along because it's kind of, it's deep stuff, it's heady stuff. And I want to kind of set the stage a little bit because you did grow up in as you said, a fundamentalist Christian upbringing. You were taught about your purpose here and your soul and the idea of God and what it meant to be a good person from through a very specific kind of lens. Is that fair to say?
That's very, very good. Yes.
Okay. The 3D versus 5D, I know you'll lay out for us, but I kind of want to tie it into a little bit of what's going on, I think, in our world right now is because it seems like, you tell me if I get it wrong, because I'm just kind of going with my understanding, but it seems like right now, especially, there's a very obvious split between really holding on to old ways of being some might say kind of rigid ways of being, like you said, a fear-based way of being where the divinity is not within us. And then this kind of other movement toward being, if I get it wrong, you tell me, but more inclusive, more understanding that we have divine within each of us, and that, we cannot grow if we stay thinking in very rigid and kind of restrictive terms. I know that sounds really vague, but maybe setting the stage for this would be a little bit about what your early life teachings told you about God or about our purpose here, or how we were supposed to go about being good people.
Absolutely. Well, of course, I was taught the anthropomorphic teachings of the old man in the sky kind of teachings, which never made much sense to me innately within, because as I said earlier, I felt what I call a presence within myself that didn't align with the God I was being told on the outside of myself. So that's the path that I have followed for over really 6 decades as a young man. I started ministering at 17 years old full time by just an absolute Gnostic moment of gnosis, of just direct knowledge coming into my human mind from, I believe, divine mind. And I have followed that for all these years, and I've talked about that process to people, and I found that some resonate with that path particularly. So I really think that I'm not alone at all, but I think people are waking up. And I think when, everybody thinks they want enlightenment and they want to wake up, but what are you waking up to? That's the question. I thought I was going to wake up and be in paradise. I thought I was going to wake up and be somewhere in some heavenly state, but I'm waking up to a world that I've called real, that no longer can I call it real. It's not, the popular saying of the new earth teachings that was so popular through Tolle, really resonated with people and the mass consciousness, because I think we're looking for something that is breaking through. And I think the breakthrough is causing breakdown. And I was asked many, many years ago in meditation, do you want to try to use your ministry or your passion to try to fix what's breaking down, or do you want to assist in what's breaking through? And of course, what I think is breaking through is frequencies from higher fifth dimension and on is breaking into our third dimensional world. And because of that, it's breaking down the old patterns of 3D. And that would include everything from religion to science to education. We got to learn new ways in which to reach the souls that are coming in today. Where I live now, I notice that there's a new school that's available here in which the kids come in and set the subject for what they wanted to learn about. And it's just a whole different system. So I think new systems are trying to break through. Now, at the same time that's happened, you also have the ego world showing up. And that's the fear world, the world of separation, the world I'm not you and you're not me. And it's using everything from gender to race to orientation to everything to try to prove this separation that we have today. So people ask me all the time, I thought you said this is going to be one of the most spiritual times in our lives. And I still believe it's one of the most spiritual times in our lives. And how I know that it's spiritual is because transformation has begun. And one of the signs of transformation is always chaos and crises. And I've learned that through quantum physics, actually. For instance, I was reading about how one atom becomes another atom by first becoming unstable at the molecular level, and all the molecules are unstable and chaotic and whatever. But that has to be for them to reorganize into a higher state of the next level of their evolution to the next atom. Well, I think that's happening on the planet. I think that we're absolutely going into a state of chaos to become initiates to make this leap of our evolution into the next level of what it might mean to be a human being.
So, as you're talking, I did look at some of your other interviews and I read your bio, and, I was I was asking myself some questions that I had as you were talking. You mentioned 3D as like a fear-based world. I'm going to use my language. Again, you tell me if this doesn't resonate with you. But I was thinking a lot of the challenges we've been facing, a lot of dogmatic thinking, but that could be, people could interpret that anyway, that they want. But tribalism, I'm going to say aggression that's equated with strength. And I don't think they're the same.
No.
I'm thinking a loss of, or an inability to be empathic, so a deficit in empathy, in inclusion, and seeing people as equally important. I don't know if I'm expressing that well, but when I think about spirituality and my spirituality, it's like, it's broad, right? So it's not specific to a particular religion. For me, that's not a fit, but everything from like, okay, how do we care for the planet that sustains us? How do we care for animals we coexist with and depend upon? How do we care for people even if we don't know them? How do we respect other people and honor, what is different about us, and realize that we don't all have to be the same to love each other? I don't know if that fits in the 5D model that you're talking about versus the 3D.
I think you put it very well. 3D, really what we're doing here, by you talk about 3D, 4D, 5D, whatever, we're using numbers of 3D to communicate something that Spirit is trying to say to us that doesn't have a language for. The language is the inner language. It is the language of light, for instance. And by the way, I'm so excited that we're seeing a emergence of light language that's showing up across the world. A lot of podcasts that I'm on are people that are teaching light language, because I think that the Spirit in us has something to say that is so pure and so clear that it's not going through the filters of the five senses to be dumbed down to fit some already preconceived belief that we picked up along the way, in that way. But what you were describing to me was the attributes of being spiritual and not just religion. The word religion is an interesting word. It comes from the Latin word religio or religiare, which means to bind together. Mm-hmm. So if you think about what religion is, it is the coming together and the binding of a people in certain creeds and dogmas and doctrines that is placed upon them from the outside of themselves to keep them from thinking for themselves. And that's what's happening in this age of information, is people are beginning to take their power back from all of these religions and different sources outside of ourselves, and people are beginning to think about things as observers. Now, we know through quantum physics that the observer changes things, right? So when an observer is looking at a wave, it becomes a particle. So we're realizing our power, and so much of that power has been given away to so many different systems is what we call the 3D world. Now, I use these terms 3, 4D based on Einstein's idea that we know that everything that my five senses sees is in 3-dimension height, width, and breadth. And then you add time relative to that, and you have 4D, 4D continuum. So anything above that, we're going to call it 5D, right? Because
Okay.
it means the next dimension of our evolution that we are, we're raising our vibration to stabilize it as the new norm. So instead of the old norm of fear and the old God judgment and all of that, now we're finding a gentle spirituality. And I'd like to say that actually what's happening for people who are becoming more spiritual than religious, common sense is kicking in. Common sense that I can learn from you if you're different, rather than be intimidated by you if you're different from me, that you have a contribution to the whole of your unique incarnation as the gender or the race or the experience, and your story is so valuable. And it wasn't in religion. We weren't able to tell our stories. We had to listen to his story or his story. Well, I'm interested in my story or mystery. That's my story, is my story of my creation, coming out of a true created being, that I really can't name or understand because it's far beyond my human understanding, but innate faith tells me it exists. And I think we're beginning to see that more and more, as people are experiencing this awakening moment that we're in.
As you're talking, I'm thinking of something, and I just briefly mentioned it before we began recording, but I think what you're referencing really is something we are seeing in the larger population and world. And that, I mentioned that I think this is Pew Research data, but the fastest growing religious group in the United States, at least, is that of spiritual but not religious. And, I just want to say, as my personal disclaimer, I know a lot of people find incredible community and comfort in religion. It is vital to their well-being. It is an important part of their spiritual path. So I just want to say that even if it is not my path, I can understand and respect that it is a very important part of many people's paths. So that's kind of my disclaimer. But it's interesting. And I'm just disclosing this very obliquely before we started. I said, I want to talk about this topic in a way that's inclusive, because I know that many people who listen to my show don't necessarily fall in one religious box or another, or even one gender box or another. And so to me, when I hear what you're talking about, I think about that kind of like a big tent, like that has room for everybody. Again, that's just my wording, but.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I think that the point where spirituality takes over religion in us is understanding who we are. That's the greatest truth, is my true identity, who I am. And I think who I am is first a spiritual, energetic being that is whole. I do believe in some kind of intelligence, call it God or whatever you want to call it. I don't care what your name for it is. But we all innately know there's something bigger than ourselves. There's an intelligence of some kind that has made all of this happen to us. But I believe that because it's beyond my sensory perception, I'm going to call it spiritual. And that's what spiritual is to me. It's what's beyond the sensory world that I live in. And I just really like what you said. I think you put it very, very well. I don't want to come off as the enemy of religion. I've never had any bad experience with religion. I got out very early as a child, so I didn't have an experience of somebody kicking me out or whatever. I just followed the path out. But I want to say that I think religion belongs to, and I see people in three stages of their evolution. I see them as infant babes who need boundaries. If you're a baby, you need the playpen, you need the bed, you need the rails, you need to safeguard the house because they don't hurt themselves. And I think there's people entering at that level that religion gives them some kind of boundaries and gives them some kind of way in which they can find a definition within a larger system of some kind. The trouble is people don't realize that people are outgrowing these stages, and we go into adolescence. Now, adolescence is a stage in which we start finding out who we are, our personal power. How do I feel being in this body, incarnating in this race, in this gender? How am I going to fit in, to the world at whole? And I think we've gone through that. But what I'm excited about is the next stage of our evolution is going to be adult spiritual creative, in which we enter into the creative process itself. And therefore we have an influence in our destiny as spiritual human beings that I don't think we had as religious human beings, because it was kind of set for us. This is as far as you can go. Then you wait to die, and then you get to go to heaven. And now spiritually, we realize that heaven is nothing but a state of consciousness in our own mind that we can attain by doing the kind of spiritual work that people are doing. That's why you see so many workshops and people going to all these workshops, because they're really doing the work of changing their vibration, their frequency to fit their own identity as a spiritual whole created being.
That's such an interesting way that you have kind of conceptualized all of this, in terms of developmental stages. And I think that's something people can really get. as you're talking about it, because again, you are talking about some kind of, heady concepts and ones that not everybody may be familiar with. Just as an aside, when you were talking about consciousness, I was thinking, I am not a physicist. I'm a psychologist, but I, certainly have known physicists, and I know kind of what, a lot of people are talking about in that community is that consciousness is fundamental. So the consciousness is primary and our world evolves from that. And that's a tough concept for most people to get or understand in a more practical way. But it makes me think of, what you're saying makes me think of that, like that the conscious part of it, the consciousness element is primary. I need to take a quick break, but when we return, we'll hear more from David Hulse on his thoughts about consciousness, spirituality, and how we can continue evolving despite being in the midst of ever-changing and challenging times. Stay tuned.
If you've been struggling with your weight, Mochi Health is here to help. Mochi Health is a long-term weight loss solution personalized to fit your unique needs and goals. Meet one-on-one with board-certified obesity doctors and registered dietitians who are on a mission to listen. Eligible patients can access custom-formulated GLP-1 medications at an affordable set price and get them delivered to their home each month. Take our free quiz at joinmochi.com and use code AUDIO40 at checkout for $40 off your first month of membership.
And people's got to realize there's a difference in how we perceive from a human level, and it is perception. It's not consciousness. It's perception. It is a perception of myself, others, and the world I live in based upon what I've been told things are on the outside of myself. So the source of my thinking is outside of myself. Well, then I store that in all the neurons of my brain, and I have all of this chemical experience of brain cell firing of all these thoughts that are mostly past thoughts anyway. They're not present thoughts. So I think that people need to understand that's kind of the ego side of the world that we live in today, is to perceive it based upon outer influence of how I've been told and taught to see myself. The big one to me is this idea of the doctrine of original sin, which is not even mentioned anywhere in the Bible, the word original sin. That Christians have made up, which was done. I can give you the date and the person that did it back in many years ago. One of the priests that decided this idea of original sin, but it has been so a part of the Christian teaching today that we're all born in sin. Well, I'm not born in sin. I'm created in blessing. So I try to move things from original sin to original blessing, because and I have things to back that up. A lot of my background is through theology and scripture, so I get scriptures. But I'll just throw one out. It's just a quote,
Okay.
So it doesn't matter where it came from. But it says, "For we, the true we, us, was found in the mind of Creator before the world began, and was given all spiritual blessings." That means blessing is original, not sin is original. Nobody innately knows they're a sinner. There's not somebody over in some primitive land that's never heard of religion or God that all of a sudden one day says, "Oh, I'm a sinner." No, you don't know it till the missionaries land and start teaching you that you're a sinner. So those kind of teachings originate outside of ourselves. But what's happening into the spiritual community is they're starting to get thoughts from the inside of themselves that don't match the thoughts that have been on the outside. And that's causing a little bit of a challenge right now. And I like to say,
A lot.
when the person you think you are meets the person that you truly are, it starts out with a little bit of conflict going on. But it's a good conflict. It's a conflict that the caterpillar goes through to become the butterfly. Like, what is happening to me here? I'm melting. I'm going into goo and whatever. And I think a lot of people think that about the world. Look at it. It's going to hell in a handbasket. Look what's going on politically and whatever else. No, this is spiritual. This is transformation. We're on the verge of something so great. of intervention of spirit and light into the world, that people who are preparing themselves to receive it are going to stabilize it and normalize it as a new earth and a new heaven.
Wow, there's so much there. It's interesting because I'm just disclosing, I have been really having to work extremely hard to manage my distress over what has been going on nationally and globally. It's a very difficult time in history. And I guess there are always difficult times in history, right? But, I've heard other people, other spiritual teachers and intuitives, because I know a lot of intuitives, that's a whole other topic, but saying something similar, energy healers, other people saying that we're going through this because as a collective, we have to, which is really hard from an earthly perspective to wrap your mind and emotions around because it's so hard. But what are we going to do with this opportunity to grow since we cannot stop? We can't get around going through what we're going through,
That's
I
right.
guess.
That's right. There's no way around it. There's no way over it, under it. We've got to face it, and we're here to do it. And I think that so many of us incarnated specifically at this time, equipped to know how to make it through this and make it to the other side. And I find that interesting. Now, you use the word inclusive a few times, which I love that word inclusive. And I
Not
think
everybody does.
no, they don't.
Lately, it's a trigger word for a lot of people.
But I don't know how much, I kind of integrated the teachings of A Course in Miracles, Marianne Williamson. It was a great influence with me in the 80s and the 90s. And I've gleaned from all of these. I've never got caught in any one of these spiritual schools of thought, but I've gleaned from all of them what resonated with my innate intelligence in there. But I do love this idea that we're all one spiritual being. If you could follow everything down, you would find one consciousness, one spiritual consciousness. A lot of us just call it the I am and just stop. No label. No label. I'll tell you what, we'd transform the world if 24 hours, everybody just said I am and put no label on it. Because in the I am, there's not a Republican, there's not a Democrat, there's not a gay person, a straight person, there's not a man, there's not a woman. There just is the essence of life in its most purest form. And when that became conscious of itself is when creation took place. So consciousness of the infinite, the unmanifested, is the point of consciousness that is waking up in us. Now, some call it Christ consciousness. Call it again what you will. I'm not into these terms and names, but there is a part of our being that is a higher vibrating consciousness that has not been a part of our sensory consciousness that people are becoming. For 25 years, I taught sound energy work using vibration through tuning forks.
The Solfeggio frequencies.
Yeah, the Solfeggio frequencies. So I was very successful with that, teaching it all over the world and training people, certified people in that, because I believe that these Solfeggio frequencies are given to us as the curve in linear time. In other words, we go third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension is a curve. It is a curve.
Do you want to just
time and space.
Do you want to just quickly explain for people who are not familiar with the term Solfeggio frequencies? Because I know, I do a lot of guided meditations. I use different binaural beat technology and things in some of my recordings. Some of my recordings are done with HemiSync, but a lot of people may not know what you're talking about with these different sound frequencies. Could you just briefly explain that?
I sure can. What was called, and it's important you realize that people are not distinguishing between Solfeggio and original Solfeggio. That's not the same thing, because there was a Solfeggio that was being taught to the early Catholic Church for Gregorian chants. But there was always an earlier. All these religions have an earlier time in which it was more mystical than before they organized it, right? You got the first and second century of Gnostic teachings. You've got the Kabbalah for Jewish. You got all of these have a mystical early part of them before they were organized by man into these dogmas and doctrines. So one of the great frequencies that were being used were called Solfeggio frequencies, and they were unique frequencies that empowered people. When people use these sounds and sang these sounds, they felt more godlike than human-like. In other words, they felt their spirituality. They felt that higher part of themselves when they were played. And of course, like most things in 3D, we tend to take these things and to reorganize it into something else. And finally, somebody was brought in to change the method of teaching Gregorian chants, who did not like the first note that they were using in the solfeggio, which was an ut, or ut quint laxus in Latin, and said we can't have something that ends in a consonant. It's got to be a vowel. So ut was changed to do, and do became a deer. And now we have Julie Andrews in the meadow with the kids singing this watered down 12-tone temperament boxed in music of the West.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why people, I think, are attracted more in meditation toward more Eastern sounds and whatever, because it's out of the box of 12-tone temperament music. So anyway, what happened to me is I got into DNA activation work very early in the 80s and heard about a 528 hertz that was being used by biochemists to repair DNA. And I thought, I have to have that frequency. Well, I couldn't find it in our scale at all. And so someone said, did you know you can have a tuning fork made in any that you want? Well, by that time, I found there was 5 other frequencies that had been taken out of the church by the 17th century, called original solfeggio. And something just said in me, have them all made, have all the forks made. And I'm telling you, when I got those forks and held them in my hand, I stood at a fork in the road. Name of my book, by the way, Fork in the Road. And I knew everything was going to change. And I had built a very successful ministry. I had a lot of followers across the country that thought I'd gone crazy because I was going to use tuning forks now. But there's something about tuning forks that's a raw vibration. There's not an emotion to it. It's not a song that makes you think about when you're breaking up with somebody or when you're falling in love with somebody, but it just keeps you in the present moment. So that's what happened. And then downloads begin to come. In 1990, I just started getting downloads of how to use these frequencies. But what I heard was it's time to restore everything that's been edited out by man back into the end of this age. So this age can move into the next age fulfilled with no karma.
And I forgive me, I just want to make sure that for people who are completely naive to the idea of these frequencies, when you're talking about a specific frequency, you're talking about hertz or cycles per second. It's literally the vibration of the music. And I have heard of people, and I have had the experience myself, where certain frequencies of tone or music do make your body and mind feel differently, and you can shift into a different state of awareness. I'm just saying this for people who are new to this. When I also do have the brainwave entrainment music behind my meditations, it's a similar kind of philosophy. You do shift your state of awareness, whether it's from normal waking awareness to more meditative or, relaxed and daydreaming and so forth. But there's an enlightenment type of feeling, if I'm getting this right, to some of these very high frequency sounds and musical compositions.
Certain frequencies act as a link to other higher parts of ourself that we do not access in our daily world. And therefore, by stopping and using a vibration, now it can be a tuning fork, it can be bowls, it can be chimes, it can be bells, it can be the voice, whatever vibrates, right?
Yeah.
Now, yeah. So I think that the fact that these frequencies uniquely resonate with parts of ourself that's kind of not being used, it's kind of in a indifferent state, it wakes it up. Now, the way I explain this so everybody can understand it is think of your body and mind as an orchestra. All right. So I go downtown and I want to go to the orchestra. Well, it's not pleasant when I first get there because they're all tuning.
Yes.
Yeah, the violins are squeaking over here because they've got strings that are too loose and they've got strings that are too tight and they've got to find a balance somewhere, and the winds are over here, and it's just all over the place. How horrible. But they're each tuning to their vibration that's going to complement each other. And so when the conductor comes out with that baton and that first sound and all that comes together was due to all of the tuning that's going on. So I'd like for people to see that what's going on politically and in other areas is a retuning of our human story by these new vibrations that are showing up, such as solfeggio. And not just solfeggio, but there's all kinds of new frequencies that are coming in that people are picking up. But we are in the retuning part of the orchestra that's not so pleasant to hear. Another thing I want to say that's important is what's going on is our own pathologies that have been suppressed are emerging on the body politic. And this is not about them. It's about me. Now, I've been pushed to the limit. I thought I was a pretty spiritual guy. I loved everybody. Everybody's my brother and sister. We're all one. I mean, that's been so easy up until lately. And now I'm pushed to go, oh my God, are you kidding me? That is not my brother, and I'm challenged, but it's pushing my boundaries out. But what I'm doing is making a different choice. Instead of seeing it as it appears, I'm seeing it spiritually as everybody's a player. And we need players to help the breakdown so that we can get the breakthrough. I have a spiritual center here in Charlotte. And so one Sunday after the election, I decided to use a very simple story about Israel and how that they had been in slavery for 340 years and did nothing about it. Nothing about it. So it said God, their God, God of Israel, hardened the heart of Pharaoh to move them out of complacency. And I think if we're not using this that's going on right now to move us out of our complacency and to really start doing the deeper spiritual work that is needed for us, I don't know what is ahead for us. This is a time of making the right choices and align your choices for ways in which that we can co-create this outcome of a more inclusive, better place to live.
So what are some things people can do to kind of meet the challenge of the current time, to, step into the better version of themselves so we can collectively be better with each other?
Okay. First is take the responsibility for your own thinking and how that you are thinking. And there's so many wonderful, what I'm trying to do right now with this Academy for Spiritual Awakening is to give people some way to help facilitate a lot of what is waking up in them that they don't have the words for, which I appreciate what you're doing here on this, because I realize I can get out there a little bit and you keep bringing it back so that we can, which is a very important part of this thing. But I just feel like that people can research, get involved. Don't let everybody tell you what to think. Don't let every book or every speaker, even myself, I'm not your source of your knowledge. Your knowledge is in you. It just needs to be awakened. And that's through intention and certain frequencies and vibrations. So you want to find those that are facilitating that with you to wake up within you. And of course, we have to put in meditation. I know it's a word overused, but meditation is the way of learning how to still the chatter of the ego mind that's constantly analyzing and trying to figure it out, and learn how to relax through faith into our true self and trust that it's going to lead us. And we need clarity right now. We need to know how to make proper decisions that are aligned with the higher purpose and the higher plan that is going on in there. I think we who are doing what we're doing through podcasts and through teachings are very important, and trying to assist people to know that you're not crazy, that what's going on in you is an opportunity for growth and for maturity and to learn. So, there's many things that we can do. It seems like all the people that came to my classes with tuning forks all came through Reiki. I don't know. Reiki seems to be a door or a gateway to bring people into spirituality more than anything.
So interesting. You know, it's funny. You had a quote that you made, and you referred to the caterpillar kind of metaphor earlier a few moments ago. But I think you said something on another podcast that I thought, oh, that's such an interesting way to phrase this. Tell me if I get it wrong. I'm going to paraphrase it. But it was something about like the caterpillar doesn't go through all of that to be a better caterpillar or something to that effect. Like the idea is like, oh, we got to break out of this and become a butterfly.
Absolutely. So the caterpillar does not go through that to emerge as an enlightened caterpillar, is the quote. The caterpillar, I want you to imagine a caterpillar just nibbling along on a leaf for its entire life. It's just undoing all of its resources behind it until there's nothing left, and it's at the end of the leaf, and it seems like it's doomsday. I've gone as far as I can go. I can't take it anymore. And it's at that moment that something awakens in the butterfly called imaginative cells. Now, that is science that has named these imaginative cells. And that comes out of the goo of the breakdown of the caterpillar. And therefore, it begins to imagine itself in the next stage of its evolution of what it can become. And because of that, then it activates a different set of DNA that begins to give it a different pattern of how those chaotic molecules now starts reading a different blueprint. Well, I know this is big, but I do not believe we as Homo sapiens have reached our limit. We're still dealing with illness, disease, sickness. And oh my God, how much time do we give to these bodies, these 3D bodies? And I know within these 3D bodies is a different set of divine DNA that is awakening in us, and it's going to give us a different etheric pattern, because when cells die and replicate, they read the etheric pattern. And that's what I taught people with tuning forks: change the etheric pattern, which is cause, and the body will resonate with effect to it. And that's called in the Bible resurrection. When we talk about Jesus as resurrection, that's all we're talking about is a higher vibration and frequency that raises us into a higher and better self. And that self awaits us. It's already there. It's already been created. But the work that we're talking about is what's going to help us to arrive at that place. It's called the law of resonance. When I resonate with truly who I am, who I thought I was, will dissipate into the illusion from which it came from.
So interesting. And again, a lot to think about there. And a lot to think about how we can each kind of, again, navigate these challenging times we find ourselves in, and, kind of find who it is we want to be. I'm just one last thought on that. Like, I'm thinking, because I was talking to someone who is struggling with, why do I feel like a lot of people feel this stuckness, this kind of like this kind of edgy feeling of, I know I want things to be different, and I know that I can't stay the same, and I'm not yet sure of what that's going to look like or how I'm going to get there. But what you're saying is, this is really, in the collective, this is where we're supposed to be. We're figuring it out and doing things like meditation, doing things like re-examining, again, who we are and who we want to be, using more in the new age type of tools. I don't want to say new age because people automatically kind of dismiss that, but of the new age, like whether it's through music or tuning forks or energy practices or meditation and so forth, and kind of opening our hearts and getting out of our own way with some of the dogma that we've been handed. These are ways we can kind of step into this next era, kind of become the butterfly rather than just another version of the caterpillar.
The way you aligned all those things is exactly what that little caterpillar is thinking at that moment. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know what it's going to look like. I have no idea what it's going to be, but I know something is changing and it has to change. So I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be in the scheme of my story to reach my potential. And those listening to us right now, I really think if Spirit had a word for you today, it's you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You've attracted into your life all these different people that are there as opportunities to teach you and to make you stronger. And I think that we are totally in one of the most spiritually exciting times that we've ever seen. And if we can just hold that vision and not get sucked in, maybe a little less news, maybe a little less going down the rabbit holes. And really, I check in and see if the world's still here, and that's about it. But I'm not going to get sucked into this drama that is going on here, because I don't think that's the final word. I think the final word will be diversity, love, and oneness. That's where we have to be going. There's nothing else to go to.
Yeah, totally agree with that. David, I really appreciate your thoughtful and compassionate approach to spirituality, your inclusive approach to spirituality, and your encouraging message. Where can people find out more about your classes, your book, your other work?
Sure. You can just go to www.davidhulse, like your pulse, Hulse.com. And that'll put you in the academy. And there's some free stuff that you can download to kind of get an idea of some of my classes that I'm offering on there. I'm really in the process of this academy of leaving my legacy of all these teachings that I've done for many years, but I'm trying to meet people where they are, all the way from Bible 101 to chakras to whatever we go. So there's something for everybody on there. So please check it out. And if you don't know about the Solfeggio and that kind of resonated with you, all you have to do is get online and put in Solfeggio frequencies. My company, which was Soma Energetics, which is still going. I'm still a part of it. I still do a lot of the video teachings. Check that out. And you'll learn a lot about this very powerful set of frequencies. And I want to thank you so much for having me, and the lovely rapport that I have felt with you to do this today. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. And I'll put the links in the show notes so people can easily find you. But David, again, thank you so much for making the time to speak with me today. I enjoyed connecting with you.
You too. Have a great day.
Likewise. This has been another episode of Unpacking Possibility. If you enjoyed the episode, and I know you did, please remember to like, share, follow, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. And of course, until next time, be well.